Hi, this is Aurora, and I'm going to show you how to make a snow plane in LightWave such that you can have particles falling on it, sticking to the plane, and actually piling on top of each other. This is designed for the people in the spinquad.com Winter Wonderland Challenge for 2007. Okay, so let's get started. I use nulls for my emitters, so I hit Control N to create a null, and I'm going to just call it snow. There are many ways to create emitters in LightWave. I just use nulls. It works for me. So that's what we're going to do. I locked it in place. Let's zoom this out so you can see what's going on here. There's our emitter. We'll hit P for properties, and under the dynamics tab, we'll add an emitter and double click on it to open it up. I want to create a group called snow, and the groups are to allow the particles and other dynamic objects to interact with each other, and well, there's all kinds of uses for groups, which I'll explain in a later tutorial series. I'm going to leave the birth rate at 200 for now. I am going to crank up the particle limit to 10,000 so we can get lots of them. Now my plane is a 100 or 1 meter by 1 meter, and I want my emitter to be just a little bit smaller than that, just so that you don't see particles falling off the side of it because my emitter is larger. And because it's an emitter, we don't need it to be very thick. So there we go. We have our basic setup right there. One thing I'm going to do right away is I'm going to give the particle a size of 0.01. I'll explain why in a couple minutes. We want to see it, so I hit show size and output size, and we need some motion on it. So we'll come over here and we'll give it a negative 0.5. Actually, yeah, that's about right. And we'll go ahead and hit calculate. And there we go. We got our particles falling down, and as you notice, they're falling. Let's make it go a little faster so you can really see it falling through the plane here. There we go. Now they're falling through the plane. We want the plane, the objects, to hit the plane and stick to it. So we're going to move over to our plane object. We'll go over to collision. Add a collision surface and open it up. We want it to work with the same group as the particles, so snow. And you notice now that the particles are hitting the surface and they're bouncing off, which is great because now we see that we have collision to it. But we want the particles to hit the surface and stick to it. So one thing we'll do is we're going to change the mode type from bounce to stick. Now you see the particles are coming down and sticking to it. Now if you notice here and there, you'll see particles falling through. And the reason why is because it's looking at the literal geometry, the quads and the triangles of it, and calculating the interaction based on that. We really have a subdivision surface, so we're going to change our type over to object subdivision, which now shows a subdivision surface, and you notice our particles aren't falling through anymore. If you're still having problems with that, either increase your subdivision amount over in Modeler, or you can increase your bind power or the probability that hit the surface and do what we tell it to, in this case stick. Now one thing I want to show you here is that our particles are hitting and sticking to it, but they're also sliding down into little valleys and so forth. That's because the particles still have velocity and they're moving around with the surface. We don't want that to happen. So in order to fix that, we'll go back over to our object. Instead of using friction, which will apply friction and slow things down, we actually want to stop it completely. So we're going to hit the fixed power up to 100, meaning the particle is going to hit the surface and it's going to fix to it or stick to it in this case and not move around. And there we go. We got our particles falling down onto the surface and sticking to it. Now I want to show you a couple things really quickly. First thing you'll notice is the particles are falling down and they're actually forming a round region. It's not completely square. You're missing things over here. In your renders, you'll have a lighter density of snow falling over in the corners than you will in the center. So to fix that, you go back in here, just change your nozzle type from sphere to box, and as the particles fall now, you'll see that you get equal density of the particles falling based on the size, the generator size here. For the next step, I'm just going to narrow down this width in the z-axis a little bit. It's only to show you how to make things work. It's not to do anything else. Our particles are also melting. We want our particles to last a long time, so just crank up your lifetime here to make them stick for a while. Now, as I said, we want the particles to pile up. And let's just move this over so we can see things here a little bit. Our particles are falling down, and they're actually falling down such that they are overlapping each other. If we increase this out to 180 so you can get a little bit more time to see the particles falling, you'll see that the falling down, they're not interacting with each other, not piling up. To fix that, we want to go over to the interaction tab, and we want to make sure detect interactions on, and we want self-interaction, meaning it's just going to interact with particles from this emitter. And we're going to set it to crowd. Now we got to give it a second here too, and I'm going to turn this down really quick so we can change some settings, and I'll explain why we're changing the settings in a minute. Let's just speed things up here, folks. The force of the particles coming down is such that right now the particles are still going to interact with each other, they're going to crowd each other out, force them around a little bit, and not actually stack up. So we want to decrease our force, so we don't have a lot of crowding force going on. So drop it all the way down to 1. Don't hit 0. You want it greater than 0. Just drop it down to about 1%. We also want to have the particles have a stronger, more solid surface. So we're going to change our viscosity up to 1000%. And just think of viscosity in this regards as stiffening it up or making that particle more solid. And if we were to calculate this, you'll have to hit calculate in between doing these to make sure that all the interaction calculations are actually taking effect. They don't always happen. And if you spend this out to 180 now, you'll see the snow is going to be calming down and it's going to start stacking up. There we go. See the snow's falling down nice and gently, and we just need more particles here. And we gotta wait for it to recalc here really quickly. And this is another reason why I said you needed size for the particles. If you don't have a particle size, you will not get self-interactions. The particles will not interact with each other. You need size. You also need a particle weight. They just have to be greater than 0. You notice on our particle size we set it to only 0.01. Now you see that the particles are falling down and they're starting to stack up with each other, and we give them a nice stiffness to it, but the snow is still consolidating a little bit too much for our likes. We want it to actually not consolidate so much. We want it to pile up a little bit more. We need to wait for it to finish calculating. I'm going to cheat and just hit Control to stop it really quickly. I'm going to drop this down just for speed's sake again. We'll go over here to the particle size. Remember I set that to greater than 0, 0.01 in this case. Now to make them a little bit more stiffer or more resistant to each other, just increase the particle resistance, but you only need a little bit. If you increase it too much, you're going to start running into problems again. Re-hit calculate to calculate things out again. And as we go, you'll start to notice that the particles are falling down and they're starting to stack up on top of each other. You still get a little bit of consolidation, but nowhere near what we used to have. And I'll go ahead and play this out longer, and you'll notice that the particles as they're falling are beginning to stack up. And while we're doing this, I basically made this for the spinquad.com Winter Challenge of 2007 for people doing snow. If anybody has any problems or questions with it, please feel free to jump on SpinQuad and feel free to email me or ask questions therein. And we'll let this play out. I hit calculate, so it's actually calculating it out. And for those in the challenge, good luck, and I hope you have fun. And we'll just watch our particles fall and stack up here. All you have to do now is just go ahead and add your hypervoxels in. If you want the snow to be smoother, go ahead and use the surface hypervoxel and make sure you have add blending on, and it'll smooth all your particles out. Now if you don't care about that or you want a rougher surface, which snow really is, go ahead and leave the blend mode off. Then you can either use surface particles or you can go ahead and use sprites. You can even hit clip maps and put little snowflake images onto your clip maps. I'm not going to get into texturing today. I'm just showing you how to get the dynamics to work for you. And you notice that the particles are now falling down. They're hitting our surface, sticking to it, and they are stacking on top of each other. We still have a little consolidation, which is exactly what we want because that's exactly what snow does. And with that, we'll let it play and have fun and good luck.